والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. Before we get into the subject that we want to get into, we find ourselves forced to remind the sisters again of the issue of being silent. We are planning to place a speaker back there so that the sisters inshallah can hear better, but this is no excuse for those sisters who want to talk. We will remind those sisters that it is better for them to pray in their houses, and that the Prophet ﷺ indicated that prayer for the sister in her house is better than the Prophet's masjid, than prayer in his ﷺ's masjid. And of course, prayer in the Prophet ﷺ's masjid is how much in reward? 1,000 for each salat. 1,000. So if this is a case that he ordered the women at his time not to pray, or rather it was preferable for them to pray in their houses rather than in his masjid, this shows that coming to the masjid is something that's optional, something that is permissible. Nevertheless, the subject that we want to speak about today is a subject that is so basic, and common sense would dictate that any person would, a fraction of any intelligence, would understand how important this matter is. But from all that we see and all that we experience, and the interacting of brothers and the interacting of the sisters, we find that this matter is the furthest thing from their mind, the furthest thing from their lives, the furthest thing from being implemented. And that is the importance of unity amongst the believers. The importance of unity amongst those upon the minhaj as-salaf salih. The importance of unity amongst ashab al-hadith, ahl al-hadith, ahl al-athar, ahl al-sunnah. The importance of unity. This is something, like I said, many brothers, whenever it's brought up, say, well, you've talked about that 100 times. Well, you talk until it's implemented. And after it's implemented, you talk as a reminder so that it's never abandoned. So since it's a situation or the matter or the circumstances such that it has been talked about on several occasions and we yet to see this matter implemented to the degree that it should be, then we talk about it again and again. We have to know that unlike others who want to unify, for the sake of unity in a general sense, who want to unify so that they can develop some strength and power and overtake something or go into some type of initiative, or want to unify because of this or because of that, that unlike the others, we who are upon kitab wa sunnah by the grace of Allah and the minhaj as-salaf salih and the understanding of the sahaba, we understand that this is an asl of our deen. This is one of our usul, one of the usul that we cannot leave, one of the usul that we must understand, one of the principles of asl that we must understand and implement. And you know that makes a great difference between the implementation of something that you think is optional or you think is, okay, it's nice to do, but I don't have to do it, and something that is part and parcel of a foundation, fundamental principle of your deen. If this understood in this way, that I'm not really Salafi unless I'm having this unity, that I'm not completing my Salafiyya, I'm not fulfilling the name of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Al-Jama'ah alladhina yajtami'una ala al-haq, those who gathered upon the truth. They came together upon the truth. Their hearts came together upon the truth. They had unity upon the truth. They became connected upon the truth. They didn't separate once the truth came to them, but it increased them in being together. It increased them in unity, and it increased them in love for one another. It increased them in harmony. It increased them of being guardians and protectors of one another. It increased them in brotherhood. It increased the sisters in sisterhood. This is what is meant. This issue is so important that every scholar, almost every book on Aqeedah, almost every book dealing with the Sunnah and speaking against Bid'ah, all the way from the time of Usul al-Sunnah, للإمام للقائي, and Shahr al-Sunnah l'Imam Barbahari, and Sharia lil-Ajuri, and Kitab al-Sunnah li-Abi Ma'asim, and all of these other books from the past, and the books of Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim, Ibn Kathir, and all of them, rahimahullah. Imam Zahabi will bring some of his statements, inshallah, and all of them stressing this issue that splitting and separation is not from the qualities of Ahlul Sunnah. Splitting and separating and differing and bickering and falling out and falling apart and avoiding one another and fracturing the brotherhood is not the way of Ahlul Hadith, but it's the way of Ahlul Bid'ah. It's the way of the Khawarij. It's the way of the innovators who each of them declare each other an innovator. Each of them say to each other, you're astray. Each of them say to threaten each other with hellfire. But it's not the way of Ahlul Sunnah. And it's not the way of the Sahaba. And it's not the way of the Tabi'een and the Tabi'een. So how can we do nisbah, connect ourselves to them and have this disunity? And have this disharmony? And have this matter of being separate? Then we want to run around and claim that we're connected to them, and that we are following their way, and that we are implementing their minhaj. Ibn Muhammad al-Wahhab rahimahullah mentions in his book, some of you may have read it, some of you may not have. He had min al-Rasail, besides Kitab al-Tawheed, and Kashf al-Shubuhat, and Qawaid al-Arba, and Masail al-Jahiliyyah, and Usul al-Thalatha. He had also Rasail, letters and matters that he had written. Amongst them is the Sitta Usul, the 6 principles. The 6 principles of Deen. Al-Aslu Thani, second principle. Second principle. Amrullahu bi-ijtima' fi ad-Deen. That Allah has ordered that we gather together in this Deen. Wa naha an at-tafarruq fi. And He is forbidden that we separate in this Deen. This is an asl. Aslu Thani. Second principles of the 6 principles regarding this Deen as He's laying out. فَبَيَّنَ اللَّهُ هَذَا بَيَّانٌ شَافِيًا. Allah explained this in an explanation which is clear and comprehensive and total. Meaning that anyone who misunderstood it is because they wanted to misunderstand it. Anyone who didn't have knowledge of it is because they did not try to approach and achieve knowledge of it. Because Allah has explained this principle. Bayan shafi'an. Bayan shafi'an. A clear, comprehensive explanation. Tafahamuhu al-awwam. It can be understood by the common layman. It's explained so clearly that it can be understood by the common layman, by the one who can't read and write, by the one who can't tell different fiqh issues from different fiqh issues. He's not Adam al-Tamayyuz, he can't distinguish. Yet, he can understand this asl, this principle, this fundamental, because Allah has explained it that clearly. وَنَهَانَا أَن نَكُونُ كَالَّذِينَ تَفَرَّقُوا وَاخْتَلَفُوا قَبْلَنَا فَهَلَكُوا. And He has forbidden us from being like those who separated and differed. Those before us who separated and differed and were destroyed. Separated, differed, and were destroyed. We're forbidden from being like them. وَذَكَرَ أَنْ أَمْرَ مُسْلِمِينَ بِإِجْتِمَاعٍ فِي الدِّينِ. And has reminded us that the matter or the affair of the Muslims is that they gather in deen. وَنَهَاهُمْ عَنَ التَّفَرُّقُ فِيهِ. And forbid them from separating in it. Your separation from your brother is not something you're allowed. Your separation from your brother with the same aqeedah that you have, with the same minhaj that you have, sticking to the minhaj of Salaf Salih, It's something you don't have a choice about whether you want to do or not. It's forbidden. Like other matters that Allah has forbidden. Other issues that Allah has forbidden. Do you have a choice to make a decision? Do men have a choice whether or not they want to wear gold when Allah and the Messenger has forbidden it? Do men have a choice whether or not they want to wear silk where the Messenger of Islam has forbidden? Does any believer have a choice whether or not they want to partake of swine, eat pork when Allah has forbidden? Does any believer have a choice? Say, well, today I'm going to get me some wine. That this is something permissible. He has no choice because Allah has forbidden khamr. He has forbidden separation. He has forbidden, subhanahu wa ta'ala, separation. It's haram, just like all those other issues that we have mentioned or that I have mentioned is haram. وَيَزِيدُهُ وُضُوحًا. And what adds clarity to this, مَا وَرَدَ بِهِ السُنَّةِ. What has been brought in the sunnah. What has been brought in the sunnah. The Prophet Islam in authentic sunnah and in many, many ahadith. Go to the books of sunnah, brothers. Go to the book of sunnah, sisters. And you will see him warning against separation and differing and bickering and falling out and turning one's back to one another and having hatred and disdain and discord. And you will find him ordering, alayhi salam, to have unity, to have harmony, to gather and to be upon those things that will cultivate and nourish that harmony, to preserve that brotherhood, to preserve that sisterhood. This is what you'll find in the sunnah. وَمِنَ الْأَجَبِ الْعُجَابِ, he says, and one of the most astonishing matters is that the matter of splitting in the matters of deen has become known to a lot of people as being something heavy. Yani, when he says ilm wal fiqh, having some type of ilm wal fiqh, and gathering upon deen, the one who says that we should gather, they consider him a zandiq, someone who has entered Islam to destroy it from the inside, aw majnoon, someone who's crazy. And that happens often, that truth is overstepped and tried to be replaced, but it never will, with falsehood in the minds of many. So now splitting and separating, he's talking about all these various madhahib. You can be Hanafi and I can be Shafi. You're going to be Maliki and I can be this. And it applies today to all these ahzab. You can be Ikhwani and I can be Tablighi. That this becomes something that this is, brother, this is a high level of understanding. Brother, this is high intellect. Brother, this is a high level of scholarship. The one who thinks about unity and the Muslims being together upon Kitab al-Sunnah, oh, he's a zandiq. Oh, he's out of his mind. Oh, he's crazy. And so as it was in the time of Abdullah, rahimahullah, so as it is today. Ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah, explains these things that I have just read, or this matter I have just read from Muhammad Waha, rahimahullah. Brief explanation, we won't go in total detail to it, with it. Al-Asl al-Thani min usul alladhi saqaha shaykh. It's the second principle that the shaykh has brought. Al-istima' fi ad-din, gathering deen. وَنَحْيَ عَنَ التَّفَرُّقِ فِيهِ, and forbidding to separating the deen. هَذَا الْأَصْلُ عَظِيمٌ. This is a great principle. قَدَّلَ عَلَيْهِ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. The book has shown evidence of it. The book of Allah, وَسُنَّةُ رَسُولِهِ, and the sunnah of the messenger. وَعَمَلُ الصَّحَابَةِ. وَعَمَلُ الصَّحَابَةِ. The actions of the Sahaba. And you see this in their life. When you read the life of the companions of the Prophet, what do you find? You find that Muhajirun, or rather the Ansar, Muhajirun are those who were in Mecca, Medina, and the Sabiqun awwalun, the first to accept Islam and supported the deen, fi sa'at al-usr, in the times of hardship, and Allah Ta'ala was pleased with them. And the Ansar are those who came from Medina and supported the Prophet when they migrated to them, when they migrated from Mecca to Medina, supported them, and Allah Ta'ala was pleased with them. And they fought in many of the battles. They were the ones who the pledge, the Aqaba pledge, the 2 Aqaba pledges they gave, and so on and so forth. This is known from their history, that these Ansar, they had 2 tribes amongst them, Al-Aus wa Khazraj. Aus and Khazraj. They had 100-year war. No, I didn't say 20-year war. 30-year war. 50-year war. 100-year war. Some of them killing each other's fathers. Some of them killing each other's brothers. Some of them killing their uncles. Each other's uncles. Blood was shed. Battles was fought. Yet when Islam came, when Tawheed hit the hearts, when the oneness of Allah Ta'ala was understood, when the purpose of life was known and defined and clarified, when the Sunnah was brought to them, when the book of Allah Ta'ala was recited and was implemented in their lives, when they came to Islam wholeheartedly, when they came to the guidance that Allah Ta'ala placed upon the heart of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to convey to all of mankind, that all changed. They became brothers. They forgot all of that. And it is a shame. It is pitiful. While it's downright the ignorance that many of us have not done the least of that type of harm. We haven't killed one another's relatives. Haven't taken them as prisoners of war. Bloodshed sometimes has never been shed or spread between us. And Allah Ta'ala bless us with this Islam in complete fashion, preserved, and bless us with the minhaj as-salaf. And we can't forget or forgive things that have been done with us, which is much less when you look at the issue of the Ansar. 100 years, war, killing, bloodshed. And they let that go when Iman settled in their hearts. And they let that go when they understood that the akhirah, the hereafter, was the most important matter. And they let that go when they understood that this was something that was pleasing to Allah, and that brotherhood was first and foremost and utmost in the matter of this deen. We act as if we don't understand this. You feel sometimes like you're talking to a brick wall, explaining something so fundamental, yet no one hears it. Or if they hear it, it goes in one ear out the other. And we're back to the same low level of oppression and discord and distrust and abuse and misuse of one another. And brotherhood is out the door. This is a principle of our deen. When are we going to act upon it? In the book of Allah Ta'ala, Allah Ta'ala says in this ayah you have heard. Now you hear this ayah with wuduh, clarity. Now you hear this ayah from someone who's not calling to join his hizb. Now you hear this ayah from someone not saying get on board on my thing. Now you hear this ayah being recited and related on the basis that it is. For every believer in the book of Allah, for every believer that faces the Qibla, for every believer that's on Tawheed, for every believer that's up on the Sunnah, for every believer up on the way to Salaf Salih, this ayah is talking to you and to me. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. O you who believe, fear Allah as He has a right to be feared, and die not except as Muslims. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا, and hold all of you together upon the rope of Allah. وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, and don't split. And don't split. وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ, and remember the blessing of Allah upon you. إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً, if before you were enemies, فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ, and He gathered between your hearts. فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا, and you became by His grace, by His bounties, by His mercy, brothers. إِخْوَانًا, brothers. وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِنَ النَّارِ, and you was on the edge of the hellfire. You was on the pit of the hellfire. all but falling therein. And Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala saved you from it. And Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala saved you from it. And Muhammad, this ayah you have heard many times, no doubt about it. How many of us hear part of it every Jummah and Khutat al-Hajjah? Does familiarity breeds contempt when we talk about the book of Allah? Hasha, no way. But the book of Allah ta'ala is a reminder for the believers. The believers hear the Quran and it moves their hearts. The believer hears the Quran and tears come to their eyes. The believers hear Quran and their hearts tremble and their hair upon their body stands up on edge and their hearts become gentle and their iman is increased. This is what the believer does when he hears the words of Allah ta'ala. The words of Allah ta'ala. This is a great asl, a great principle that Allah ta'ala is reminding us in this ayah that we have just recited regarding holding on to the rope of Allah ta'ala together and never separating, not allowing ourselves to separate, not allowing ourselves to split from one another. فَانْقَذَكُمْ مِنْهَا. You find yourself on the pit of hellfire. Each of us needs to recall how we were. Each of us need to recall how we were. What we was into before we got this deen. What we've been into after we got this deen. What wrong we have done. What moral crimes we've fell into. The darknesses that we have committed. On the pit of the hellfire. Nothing left but to fall in, brother. But Allah in His infinite wisdom and mercy, فَأَنْقَذَكُمْ مِنْهَا, saved us from it. And He pulled us to Islam, pulled us to Iman, pulled us to His guidance, pulled us to knowing the purpose for which we exist. يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ. Allah makes clear to you His signs. لَعَلَّكُمْ, so that you may تَهْتَدُونَ, be guided. تَهْتَدُونَ, Surah Al-Imran, verse 102 and 103. وَقَالَ تَعَالَى, Allah the Exalted stated, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ تَفَرَّقُوا وَاخْتَلَفُوا. And don't be like those who separated and differed مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتِ, after clarity had come to them. وَأُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ, and for them a severe punishment. This is an ayah we can reflect upon too. For those of us who found unity in all types of other movements and organizations that were invented by people, that we were able to have unity in Jahiliyyah. We were able to have unity when it was Hizbiyyah. When we was under one party and one group, it was us and them. We Ahlul Sunnah and the rest of them Ahlul Sunnah, but it's us and them. When it was a group, we could have unity. When it was a party, when it was some type of game. But after clarity came, بعد ما جاءهم البينات, after clarity came, it should have brought about unity. The heart should have came together automatically. There should have been harmony from the get-go, because the haqq has come. The book is Sunnah's here. The manhaj of the Salaf is defined and clarified and known. No one destroys himself except upon clarity. But we have become, many of us, like those described in this ayah. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ تَفَرَّقُوا. Don't be like those who separated, وَاخْتَلَفُوا, and differed. مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْبَيِّنَةِ, after clarity had come to them. أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. For those individuals, Allah has a severe punishment for them. This separation is forbidden. The differing is forbidden. And that which is haram means that if you fall into it, Allah will punish you unless there is tawbah or masa'ib that wipes it away, or some other means, lahum adhabun adheem, for them a severe punishment. وَقَالَ تَعَالَى, and this should be an ayah for everyone who wants the Muslims to be successful, for everyone who's tired of the Yahud's foot being upon the neck of the Muslim, and Hindus being able to burn and take the masjids of the Muslim and tear them down brick by brick with their hands, and Bosnians being able to rape the women and implant dog embryos in them, and Sikhs being able to pour gasoline upon the Muslim women and set them alight, set them on fire, and Nigerian Christians being able to crush the Nigerian Muslim's head. Everybody who's looking worldwide and who's tired of this humiliation should be thinking about this ayah. وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا, don't argue. فَتَفْشَلُوا, you will fail. You will fail. وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ, and your strength will depart. Don't argue, differ and argue. Tanaza'u is arguing and differing, argumentation and differing through arguing. What will be the result? Take it as the equation. You argue and differ, you fail. Don't have no doubt about that. Allah said it in the Quran. You argue and differ, you fail. And not only that, whatever strength you have, or whatever strength you thought you had, will depart. Will depart. وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ. وَقَالَ تَعَالَى إِنَّ الَّذِينَ فَرَّقُوا, very those who separate, فَرَّقُوا, separate, do you know whom? In their deen, وَكَانُوا شِيَعًا, becoming parties and groups. كَانُوا شِيَعًا, becoming parties and groups. لَسْتَ مِنْهُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ, you have nothing to do with them. You have nothing to do with them. So don't wait on a fatwa for a scholar to tell you to step away from somebody who's separating the Muslims. Don't wait on a million tapes. Allah Ta'ala is telling you, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ فَرَقُوا دِينَهُمْ, those who separate in their deen, وَكَانُوا شِيَعًا, and became groups, لَسْتَ مِنْهُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ, you have nothing to do with them. وَقَالَ تَعَالَى, Allah the Exalted stated, شَرَ لَكُم مِنَ الدِّينِ, He has legislated for you from the deen, مَا وَاسَى بِهِ نُوحًا, the same thing He advised Nuh with, وَالَّذِي أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ, and what He revealed to Muhammad alayhi salam, وَمَا وَصَيْنَا بِهِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ, what was revealed to Ibrahim, وَمُوسَى, and Isa. What does this matter? What does this matter? That's been legislated in the deen, that Allah advised Nuh with, that advised Muhammad alayhi salam with, Ibrahim, Musa, and Isa. What does this matter? An aqimu ad-deen, to establish the deen, وَلَا تَتَفَرَّقُوا فِيهِ, and don't separate in it. وَلَا تَتَفَرَّقُوا فِيهِ, and don't separate in it. Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah says, فَفِي هَذِهِ آيَاتٍ, in these verses, نَهَى اللَّهُ تَعَالَى أَن تَفَرُّقْ, Allah has forbidden separation. وَبَيْنَ أَوَاكِبِهِ الْوَخِيمَةِ, and He shows this ill, filthy society. وَالْأُمَّةِ بِأَسْرِهَا, the whole ummah. None of us are blind. And even those who are blind physically with their eyes, they have their hearts and their minds to reflect from what they hear or what the Muslims have been experiencing of weakness and humiliation and oppression for centuries now. What is the cause? Besides being far away from the deen of Allah and not knowing the deen, one of the greatest causes is the disunity. As for the evidence of the Sunnah upon this great principle, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, once again a hadith that you've heard 1,000 times, but in our interacting and dealing with each other, we throw it behind our back, or we act like it doesn't apply to us. He said, Al-Muslim akhu Muslim. The Muslim is the brother of a Muslim. He does not do him any injustice. He does not forsake him. He does not belittle him. Would that we get active on that sentence before we went to the rest of the hadith. That sentence, Al-Muslim akhu Muslim. The Muslim is the brother of a Muslim. The Muslim sister is a sister of a Muslim sister. These all apply. They don't do one another injustice. No dhulm between them. Dhulm is placing something in its improper place. So if you're kind to me and I'm hard to you, then I've done you injustice. If you're generous to me and I'm selfish with you, then I've done you injustice. If your tongue is free from mentioning me in a bad light, but I mention you every time I get a chance in a bad light, then I've done you injustice. If you've trusted me with some property, but I don't have the discipline, the self-worth, the honor to give you your property back, then I've done you injustice. There should be no injustice. The Prophet ﷺ said it as a fact. Al-Muslim akhu Muslim. There was no hesitation. There's nothing allegorical here. Clear statement. The Muslim is the brother of a Muslim. Doesn't do him any injustice. Doesn't forsake him. When he is in need of support, hear others talking about him badly. Can't say, hey, stop that. Can't even say that. Can't stand by his side. Can't defend his honor. Can't stand with them. Can't defend his honor. What is this? Forsaking him. Forsaking him is not forsaking him just on a battlefield, surrounded by kuffar and you run the other way. Forsaking him is a daily situation. How are you going to stand together in the midst of firepower and heat, and you can't stand together in the middle of Newark? And he doesn't belittle him. Belittle him. He doesn't put him down. He doesn't talk about him in a fashion in which he is trying to say he's nothing. He don't matter. He's irrelevant. He's insignificant. He's not important. This is belittling. Whatever words, whatever actions, whatever display that you can put on that indicates to the individual that you're talking to that you're belittling your brother or your sister, that's what is meant in this hadith, that the believers or the Muslim don't do to one another. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, At-taqwa hahuna. The fear of Allah Ta'ala is here. At-taqwa hahuna. At-taqwa hahuna. Pointing to his heart, pointing to his chest. If you have fear of Allah Ta'ala, you would avoid those actions. If you have fear of Allah Ta'ala, you wouldn't do an injustice. If you have fear of Allah Ta'ala, you wouldn't backbite and slander. If you have fear of Allah Ta'ala, you wouldn't oppress. If you have fear of Allah Ta'ala, your behavior towards your brother would be in the utmost and most highest of conduct and manner and high manners and behavior. بحسب امرأة من الشر. It's enough evil of a person. You don't need no more evil. It's enough evil of a person that he belittles his Muslim brother. It's enough evil. Got enough evil, sister. Got enough evil, brother. You don't have to do no more. You can stop all the haram actions. This is enough evil. This is enough shar that you belittle your brother or your sister. Brother or sister Muslim. Then he said, alayhi salam, Kullu Muslim. All of the Muslim. In case one want to say, well, what part of the Muslim can I transgress over? What part of the Muslim can I walk over? What part of the Muslim can I kick and step over? What part of the Muslim can I backbite and slander and lie and cheat? What part of a Muslim can I do this to? For anybody who had that type of foolish question, the answer is stated in the Prophet Islam's statement, Kulli Muslim ala Muslim haram. All of the Muslim is sacred, inviolable. You can't touch it. You better not touch it. You can't speak about it. You can't transgress. All of the Muslim, damahu, his blood, irdahu, his honor, umalahu, his wealth. And in another riwayah, narration, he said, alayhi salam, wala tahasadu, don't be envious of one another. This is a forbidden. Prophet Islam is forbidding us from being envious of one another. Wala taghabaghadu, don't hate one another. You got some hate. Well, you've been told that it's something that the Prophet ﷺ has forbidden, so don't hate one another. وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا, don't spy on one another. And each of these can have a lecture within themselves. Each of these issues can have a lecture within themselves. Anyway, at the end of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, be you, O servants of Allah, ikhwanan. Be you, O servants of Allah, brothers. Be brothers. This is an indication of the unity that the Prophet ﷺ was speaking about, or this is a clear indication of the importance of unity in these various narrations. And then in our physical affair, everyone with common sense can see that it's all about unity. Have you ever heard wherein Hajj rites was to be done by yourself exclusively? And whatever month you wanted to do, whatever month you could get off, well, you can't get off to, till Rajab, okay, you do your Hajj in Rajab. No. Certain time and directed towards all the ummah. They're at every place together. They're at Arafat together. They're stoning the Jamarat together. This is unity. 5 times daily salah. And congregational prayer. The adhan being called so the Muslims within the area can hear it to come to pray with their brothers. All together. Fasting in the month of Ramadan. All together. Eid, Na'ya, Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr, all together. The only thing we don't do together is the stuff that we seem to make up and come up with on our own thing. But in our deen, most of the ahkam, most of the issues are related for us to do it in a unified form. So what makes us think that on a local level or brother-to-brother level we have the right to have this unity? And look at the salah. I have a whole section here with articles and adillah on standing shoulder to shoulder, heel to heel. You all know the wisdom behind that. Shoulder to shoulder, heel to heel. Don't leave no spaces for Shaytan. Shoulder to shoulder, heel to heel. Make the line straight or Allah will change your hearts. Make the line straight, another hadith, or Allah will change your faces, where you look towards one another. You see this one, you want to talk to you, you won't want to talk to him, as some have explained it. Sheikh Nasser, as you know, rahimahullah, used to always say, this proves that the outer has something to do with the inner. The outer has something to do with the inner. How in the world that if you don't put your foot by the foot of your brother, and the shoulder by the shoulder of your brother, your hearts are going to change. You're not going to have the same heart towards one another. The hearts will change. Furthermore, you will be letting Shaytan in between your ranks. And do you think that Shaytan is going to bring good or he's going to bring bad? Is that an indication that there's something good to do to separate or something bad to do? Changing your faces. And in the narration that we all know in which the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba were traveling, and they would come and sit in a valley, and all of them would, as natural, talk. This one would talk to this brother, that one would talk to that brother. So therefore, they would physically separate naturally. And we know that the Sahaba had one aqidah, and the Sahaba had one minhaj, and the Sahaba was radiallahu anhu, was on the highest level of faith. Yet when the Prophet ﷺ saw this sitting physically in separation, even though the separation inwardly wasn't there, unified in their hearts, inwardly they were unified, but this physical separation, he came out angry, as if some red pomegranate or whatever had been poured up on his face. His face was so red, he was angry, and he says, this is from Shaytan. This is from Shaytan. This separate sitting. Even though their hearts was on the same matter, even though they were all up on Tawheed, even though they were all up on Sunnah, even though they were all up on the Minhaj al-Salaf Salih, yet he ordered that they sit together, that they be together, that the physical separation leads to an inner separation, that the physical separation will separate between their hearts, that the physical separation will bring Shaytan into the ranks. All of this is clear. But unlike us, and we ask Allah to improve our circumstance, unlike us, the Sahaba, once they heard that, they said they're so close together that you could take one garment and place it over them. They truly understood. It wasn't a slogan. They truly understood. It wasn't an anecdote. They truly understood. It wasn't a commercial statement, an advertisement, that the best guidance is the guidance of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that when Muhammad alayhi salam orders something, you better rush to do it. When he forbids something, you better run from it like you're running from a lion. They understood that if they left anything from the Sunnah, if they left anything of his guidance, that they didn't know what earth would hold them, what sky would cover them. They understood that, and they feared that they would be misguided. So the call is to, when you say unifying a community, how to build a community, the call is there, ya Ahlul Sunnah. The call is there, ya Ahlul Athar. Those who want to be part of the Firqat al-Najiyah, the saved group, those who want to be from the Taif al-Mansura, and they know that Allah Ta'ala is not playing, and that this is not a game, that this is real. This is real. And those who play with it will get burnt, and those who play with it will be led astray, and those who play with it will be messed up. They'll be in a worse condition than the one who never messed with it. This is salafiya. This is real. This is salafiya. It is true. This is salafiya. It is right. So it's upon us to implement it, to practice it in the masjid, in the marketplace, in the streets, in our schools, in our houses, wherever we go. Wherever we go. Our brother Abdullah gave me an example. He always gives me his example of the Salafi and the Hizbi. Say the Salafi is like the bumblebee. What does the bumblebee do? Fly around to the most beautiful, the most sweet flowers. Right? He goes and he hangs around them. Right. And what does he extract from them? Nectar. Right? Get the beautiful, sweet, pure nectar. And then what does he do with it? Keep it to himself? No, he comes up with something called honey that benefits everyone and benefits others. That's the Salafi. The Hizbi is like the fly. Where the fly hang out? Fly hang around, out. We call it Arabic qadrat. You know what it is in English. That's what he wants. What does he give to the people? You finding some garbage that you left out too long. SubhanAllah. This is the reality. This is the reality. So be bumblebees. Kun bambabiyun. Be a Salafi. Don't be a Hizbi. Be a Sunni. Don't be a Mubtadi'. Be someone who can get along with people. As the Prophet said, there's no good in a believer who can't get along with others. هذا ما عندي وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.